Cas Holmes is an artist, writer and lecturer. Her training in fine art, painting and photography is evident throughout her well-known work with textiles and mixed media. Cas's work comes from a place between the what and the why of creation, between natural and urban environments, people and place, and flows from neither a solid idea, technique, or desired outcome, but rather through a subliminal, intuitive, and fluid process. Often working on multiple pieces simultaneously, responding to materials such as discarded cloth and papers, Cas's work contains a history and offers the viewer an instant feeling of intimate friendliness as she magnifies the details of the often overlooked simplicities of daily life. Cas's work is often and perfectly described as painting with cloth and stitch sketching. Cas is the author of several books for Batsford publications, including Stitch Stories in 2015 and most recently Textile Landscapes, Painting with Cloth in 2018. Cas has received many awards for her work and recently completed a commission as part of the Gypsy Maker 4 exhibition created by the Romani Cultural and Arts Company, supported by the Welsh Arts Council. Her work can be found in private and commercial collections all over the world, from London to New York and Australia. As part of her practice, Cas works on community collaborations, developing a range of projects based on environmental themes from the natural and observed world. These collaborations offer her the insight to discover commonalities across these communities, which continue to inform her particular take on the world. We look forward to chatting with Cas, so let's get started. Hello, Cas Holmes.
Hello from the UK, and everything seems to be working. Yeah, and no haircut for 12 weeks.
Yes, I feel you. I'm embracing my grey. I'm actually really loving it. So
I embraced mine years ago.
I know. I'm working on it.
Okay, now we've got the informalities over. We now get down to the formalities.
Yes. How are you?
I'm well. All things considered, we're in a really tough lockdown here. I won't say anything about the politics of it all because I'll never stop talking about it otherwise. But we've had the most glorious spring. I mean, I think it's been the best on record. We're all staying at home in the sunshine and gardens are growing. So yeah, a glorious spring. I've been able to get out into my garden and until recently, my 1 hour of allotted walk or cycle over the local park.
Yes. And your garden has been such a delight to witness online and obviously through your work as well. It's just, there's something about the English countryside. It's very poetic. It's beautiful.
Yeah, I can't claim, I enjoy it, but I can't claim that I've worked on it. It's my partner, Derek, who's done all the work, and we kind of got out the old garden tools and digging in vegetables. So, and Grandad, when he dug vegetables in the Second World War, always planted 3 rows, 2 for the house and 1 for the kids. That was his attitude.
Oh,
so you could just pull up the veggies and eat them.
That's beautiful. That's beautiful. I'm going to say hello. Let's say hello to a couple of people. We've got Anne here. Hi, Anne. Thanks so much for joining us. We've got, is it Chloe Sui?
Hello from Townsville. I wonder if my friend Jenny, Chloe Sui, messaged, if you know Jenny Bowmer, just say to her I said hi in case she hasn't got all of the information. She's my old bud from this part of the world. We worked together in community arts many years ago, arts and libraries.
It's a small world, isn't it? It's a small world. Yeah. We've got Noni from Fibre Arts Australia. Hi, Noni.
Hello, Noni, and you too. Lovely to see your, you look like you're in a sunny place. You won't believe how sunny it is here at the moment, Noni. I think Australia's come to me in our spring.
And Janet. Hi, Janet from England, not too far away from you, Cas.
Hello, Janet.
Hi, Jeannie. Lovely to have you from New Zealand.
Hello, Jeannie.
And guess who we've got? We've got Glenys Mann.
I'm proud of you, Mrs. Mann.
We were hoping you'd join us, Glenys. Welcome. And Fiona. Hi, Fiona.
Thank you, Fiona. Jenny is probably, Jenny does a lot of community and social work in Townsville, so she may be tied up, but I think she'd be just ripped to hear that I'm here.
Fantastic.
I have a way of chasing.
Tamara from Melbourne. Hi, Tamara. Thank you so much. And then Glenys pops in. Hello, Mrs. Holmes.
Have you got the kettle on, Mrs. Mann?
We should all pop the kettle on for sure.
So, I've got my glass of water.
Yes, same here, very much. So, everyone who's watching, please feel free, pop your questions in the comments section, and we'll make sure that we get to ask Cas all your questions that you can send through. But in the meantime, we'll just start the ball rolling. I've prepared a list of questions for Cas that hopefully will give you some more insight into her work and her life in England, and we might even get to go on a tour of her beautiful home and studio if we're lucky.
Not the bed.
Not the bedroom, no. So hi Patricia. Patricia's gorgeous. Hello, thank you for joining us. And Glenys says the kettle's on. Well done, Glenys.
I'll be joining you sometime in the future for that nice cup of tea. I promise I won't have a cold this time, touch wood, or anything else that's a bit nasty.
Exactly. So, Cas, I've always really been interested in successful people and what success means to different people. And obviously there's different forms of success, but I've always found the most successful people in life, whether that's people who are, artists or business people or even actors, whatever it is, but they seem to be pulled rather than pushed to do something, and they're really driven. And I'd love to know what drives you forward to keep you creating. Like what is it?
I always find that a very difficult question to answer, because I've not known it to be any other way. Even as a young child, I'd be out in the garden drawing and sketching, and my dad always said to me that when every one of the other children would come and say, I don't know what to do, he had to find me because I'd always be finding something to do. So I suppose I could probably use the word insane with me, actually, but it's an insane curiosity with life, and that remained with me. And then as a child, there was a teacher in my primary school who recognised I had some talent. And I mean, most people know I come from a Romani Gypsy background, working class, relatively poor background, actually, because my dad was a painter and decorator. And it wasn't something I wanted to necessarily get away from. I carried that with me. But I valued what my learning could bring to me. And I think one of the things Dad said to me as I was going to college is he said, think about that word no. If somebody's asked you to do something, it's because they've seen something in you that is of value. So always meet each thing that you're asked with an acceptance and a challenge as a means to grow. I'm not certain that they were his exact words, but that was his intention. And I like to know I want to be involved with people and find out what's on around the corner. So I'm not certain I was driven to do anything for anything rewarding for financial success or fame. It was just because I was just interested in people and wanted to know what was out there.
That's beautiful. And it was interesting how you said that what sparked it was a comment from a teacher as well as your father, but your teacher recognized something in you, and that ignited something inside of you.
Yes. I mean, she'd seen me drawing, and I was given a set of drawing materials to work with. Can't be more than 8 or 9 years old. And I think the second time was I received an award when I was in my late teens, from Coleman's of Norwich. I grew up in Norwich, and Coleman's is the mustard people. And I'd passed to go to the grammar school, but part of one of the things we were doing was to go on a trip to Greece, and I wasn't going because we didn't have the money for me to go, or I thought I wasn't going. And my head teacher secured a grant so that I could go with my cohort to Greece because we just didn't have the money. And and the only reason I think Dad was accepted that was part of what I needed to do was to do a report for Coleman's, so I earned my way. And I think that kind of drive has always been there. In fact, it's you, whatever you put in, you will get out, and that goes in the classroom setting. If you give a lot of energy and you work as hard as you can in the classroom, and accept that we all make mistakes, that you'll get so much more in return, and the group and the class will grow.
I can see that in your teaching. You're such a passionate teacher. The way you engage with your students, it's incredible to watch. It really is.
It's very hard to do virtually.
Yes.
I'm a people watcher. I'm having to learn a lot of new skills, and that comes hardly late in life.
And aren't you guys just doing such an amazing job? Like, there are so many people out there, and you're just giving and you're sharing and you're learning the tech. And not only that, you're letting people inside your home. I was lucky enough earlier, before we started broadcasting, Cas took me on a little tour of her studios and her home. And it's just, it is. I mean, what a privilege. Thank you. Yeah, it's really, really beautiful. So where are we now? Are we you're in your upstairs studio?
This would have been what they call the master bedroom, if you can have a master bedroom in a council house, but it's the front bedroom. It would have been the bedroom where Ma and Pa would have slept. And I think ever since I graduated and moved here, and I've been in this house with Derek, my partner, he's lived here since he was 8 years old. So I've lived here for over 30 years. So this when we were at art college, the other rooms we used as bedrooms, and but this was where we did our stuff. We had a couple of tables. But he'll tell you that I've taken over the house. If you walk around the entire house, there's things hanging up. I sit in the living room and stitch. I sit in the garden and stitch. And he used to have his own shed in the garden. He's now got a second shed, and I have the current shed. He converted it. We were talking about me having an outdoor wet space. And he said he thought it was better that I had his, and he had a smaller one. Isn't that lovely? Simply because it's safer to have my shed in a bigger or the garden space inside the fence.
He sounds like a keeper.
Most of the time, you're finding out just how much you want to keep people after 12 weeks. He's okay. And, I think what we're going through is echoed everywhere, and I think that's to do with us being infallible. As we're all. I think this is reminding us just how human we are. Nobody. As much as you love your family, you wouldn't necessarily choose to spend 12 weeks with them, with virtually no break, would you?
Yes, it's been fun. It has been fun. Personal boundaries and personal time and space, and it's been fun. Yeah,
it's fun. You're learning things anew. You're learning, and I think that's how most people's lives were before we decided we could travel the world and do everything we wanted. That's relatively recent, and maybe the last 100 years or so, most people stayed put, didn't they?
And I find that fascinating as well, that one thing I didn't know about you before this interview was that you don't have a car. You've never had a license, and you travel everywhere by foot or bicycle or public transport. Is that right?
Yeah, and the courtesy of good friends. I'm if I'm out doing a workshop elsewhere, you wouldn't want me in a car on the road. I have no eyesight in my left eye, so that's a restriction, but it's also environmental. So I always think that anything that we do in life is about partnership. As long as I do what I need to do, people will help me do what I need to do. And I think it was when I first worked in Australia and New Zealand, somebody else, Chris, who ran the workshop, echoed that. I was feeling very exhausted. It was only my second day. And I'd said I needed to just take 15 minutes out to get some fresh air. It was very hot, very different environment. And she said, you just go for your walk, take your time, and then when you come back, that's fine. And thanks for letting us know. It's our job to make certain that you're okay. And that's one thing I think that I've learned with Fibre Arts Australia as well. And any good workshop I've been involved with, that if you support the tutors can then give back, because if you're in a different space and environment, it's sometimes you're trying to find your way through different connections, and it can be, you're traveling on your own, that can be quite exhausting as well.
Glennis has just asked a question about Derek, and does he support you in all that you do, seeing that you are so away so much?
Well, I think he's beginning to be glad that I begin to value that I'm away so much after the 12 weeks. Yes, he does. We've been together 33 years, so he's recognised that I have my own life. I'm not always going to say, as with anyone, that it's always easy, because nothing that's worth doing is easy. And there are times when I'm away, I sometimes want to be at home, and likewise he wants me to be at home. But yes, you have to be very single-minded to pursue a career in art. And we'll have interesting conversations. We've been going for walks, but yes, I couldn't be here without his support.
I'll echo that sentiment. My husband, Daniel, is behind the scenes. He's here. Say hi, Daniel.
Hi, Daniel.
He hates me right now for doing that. But yes, we need great men in our lives to support us, don't we?
Yeah, I would actually say kind men.
He is kind, yes.
Yeah. I would say kind men, as well as great, but great has other meanings for me. And there are some great men at the moment in this world. I think it depends on how you define great, but they think themselves great, and all they are a great pain at the moment. But I'm getting off of politics. I promise I'll be off of politics.
That's okay. So tell us, you completed a fine art degree back in 1983, which doesn't seem that long ago, but have you always been a textile artist, or did you have a career before that, or were you always an artist?
Well, I was in my early 20s then, so I always made drawings and paintings. So I studied fine art painting. I use that in brackets, fine art. I went to college because I just wanted to continue to draw and paint, basically. And when you go to do a degree course, there are certain specialisms you can do. And I was just finding my feet. But at that time, I hadn't picked up any cloth to work with. I was working on canvas and worked with paper. And certainly when I graduated, I received an award from the Winston Churchill Memorial Trust and went to Japan to study paper making. But I think my first encounter as an adult with cloth, after the dreaded cross-stitch apron that most people, I don't know if you did it in Australia, but I must have outgrown the apron by the time I finished it. It was horrible, and it put me off wanting to stitch, I thought, for the rest of my life. Thankfully, it didn't. But I was in my first year at art college, and materials. This seems to be the story of my life, but the materials for our first course, because we have an introductory course, hadn't arrived. So we were given old paintings that the previous cohort of students had left behind and things to work with. And we weren't allowed to choose. We were just dedicated something that we had to convert or paint over or change. And I had this canvas, which was not very nice. Tried painting over it, and I didn't know very much then. And the paint underneath kept coming through, so that I tore the canvas up. And then thought that might be interesting if I find a way of putting it together. So I picked up the needle, because at that time, that seemed the most natural thing to do. And I suppose that has been a metaphor for my life. Destroying things and then putting them back together seemed to be something I've done with cloth ever since that time. So it runs through everything that I do. What is there? What can I use? How can I put it back together? What is it of value within that I want to use?
I love that idea that it just came to you. Someone asked you to do something and then you just turned it into your own and ran with it for the rest of your life. It's amazing. Yeah.
I don't know if I thought that at the time, but I know that was a pivotal point. I thought, yeah, I can, because it is a question that's often asked of me. And that is the key point I go back to. I think that was the ha-ha moment. I don't have to leave the canvas on the frame.
At what point, that was the beginning, I guess, at what point did you see yourself, or did you refer to yourself as an artist, that you believed it in every being, every core of your being, that you just, that's who I am, there's nothing else for me in this life?
I think that, again, that's a really interesting question to ask in terms of your own practice, because before I even had a concept of what an artist was, as I said, I enjoyed drawing and painting. So it's always been part of my existence, part of what I do. Looking. Dad always got me to look around, look up, look down, and see things around me. So it was probably just almost seamlessly I started to ask the questions. And I suppose for me, that's asking the visual questions about, why is it I want to record things visually? What is it about the world that I find interesting? So that was that thing that you call that being driven from the inside of yourself. I think in terminology of whether I'm an artist or even a good artist, I leave that to the rest of the world to decide, because it wouldn't stop me. I make things because I want to do it. I don't seek approval by anybody else. That sounds really harsh, but I'm delighted when people say they like things, but they don't seek that. I think the thing that also is about art is about communicating, and that for me has been my main tool of communication. I worked in community arts, and when sometimes people don't have a voice, depending on where they come from and their social economic position, their learning abilities, because I worked with adults who had severe and profound learning disability. I've worked in prison service. And for me, it was a leveler. Once you got people engaged, they kind of clicked and could express themselves more freely. So I suppose it's not so much, am I an artist? It's what does art mean to me? And being an artist is just who I am by practice. It's like, I equally value what a cleaner does or a nurse does. It's my job.
That's beautiful. That's really beautiful. It's just visceral inside you. That's just what you do. And I loved how you said that you don't do it for anyone else. You do it for you and to communicate what's inside of you. That's incredible. Your community work too is profound. You're always working with the community and always giving. And how has that changed how you create your work from your experience through working with community?
Absolutely.
In what ways?
Well, I mentioned earlier on a good colleague and friend who's now living in Townsville, Jenny Bomer, and she does know me from early days. So we worked with a team called Spiral Arts, a community arts team in Medway. So that was one of the teams I satellited and worked around. And I worked, as I said, with various projects with prison services and hospitals. And I think what it allowed me to do, or encouraged me to do, was listen to people, listen to their voices, watch how they work, and become attuned to that. And you don't always get it, and I'm certain I don't always get it, but I try to be sensitive. I don't even think that's the right thing to say, that I'm trying to be sensitive. It's just something that I do, and I don't get it, or I don't always get it right. We're imperfect. I might misjudge something, but I work from the premise that I love what I do. I think there is excitement to be seen by re-looking at that world that we have around us and how we experience it, and using, whether it's music, your garden, if you love gardening, cooking, it's doing something creative. It's about connecting with us in here, and that's the most important thing. It's about that connection here and how we can make ourselves, how we reflect ourselves in our work back to the world. And so learning from a student, for example, who cannot hold a brush, so you have to find a way of wrapping it with masking tape before other tools were available to you freely to use in that environment, so they could grip it more easily. Taking non-verbal signals if they're enjoying spreading paint on the page, then you just make certain they have plenty of paint and just observe how they're using it and what can they do with it, and don't make judgment values about that, because the first thing is to get people engaged, not to say, well, you mustn't do it that way because it's got to be done like this. You've got to put all the yellow inside the circle or inside the daffodil. Oh, sorry, I'm not prescriptive. Okay.
That makes perfect sense, what you're saying, and I'll just add to that as well, just the gratitude that it would bring to your life as well. I would assume working with these communities that aren't necessarily as privileged as a lot of other people would really make you grateful for what makes me grateful for what we do have. And yeah, you just don't take anything for granted.
Absolutely. I'm no saint though. Heaven knows I'm no saint.
And that's what we love about you as well. So don't worry about that. Tamara says we certainly did do cross-stitch apron. She still has hers.
You still have yours. I think mine got recycled a long time ago, Tamara. Isn't it really great that we've had good teams and good communities? I mean, obviously I'll cite Fibre Arts Australia, but there are communities and teams I've worked with here, organisations who are on hold until we can meet up to work. And it's not to say I'm not finding other ways of working now, but I'm also enjoying or valuing. I'm going to say valuing the time that I have to reflect. This is what has been important to me about the lockdown, is I'm reflecting more on where I am. And whilst I'm continuing with my adult education students on a Friday, because many of those are in the older and vulnerable category, I made no decision to do any online courses for now. I know my strengths are with people, and I find that screen quite hard, but I'm learning.
Well, we're grateful that we can share some screen time with you now. So that's fantastic. A couple of questions. What have we got here? Lorna Crane. Hello, beautiful Lorna.
Hello, Lorna.
Love that you destroy and reconstruct. I think that's fabulous too. Glennis has asked a question, Cas. When you produce a book, how much new work goes into it, or do you use what is hanging around?
A bit of both, Glennis, a bit of both. A lot of what I'm doing at the moment, since my last book, Textile Landscape, I made it quite clear I needed some more reflective time before I would write anything again. And I can't say if I am or not at the moment, so I can't walk down that path. But because I'm always doing, ideas constantly churn. So I'm noting down, what am I learning from the last point of time I've written something, and it reflects back onto the way I develop my own work. Where can I go next? Because I feel that the books are also integrated into the way I work as an artist and in my teaching. I'm fortunate that I've had some fabulous contributors to all of my publications, and I'm very keen that their voice is heard through the publication as mine is, because the books I feel are a marriage of idea and meaning, making a meaning coming together. So I'll always kind of sow little seeds, post-it notes, as you might say, around the house and in sketchbooks, and this is something that I could pursue next time. So gradually my books evolve in the same way I think I run my workshops, that I start with a premise, what questions are we asking, and where can we go with that?
And sometimes the students lead you, don't they? You don't know where you're going to end up.
Absolutely. You have to have confidence with what you're doing, and also confidence that whoever's on your course, they have a different set of experiences that need to be valued, and it's a meeting point between you and the student. And that's where real alchemy happens, and magic. And of course people are interested because of what I do, and I'm glad they are, how I work and what I do, but I'm more interested in how I can encourage them to think about how they work and where they can go and what we can learn from that exchange.
That's beautiful. Just a little question from Carol Griffiths. Cas, can you please tell me which paint works best for sun printing? I've been trying to do it and having not much success.
I would really want to know what paints Carol has been using, but most silk paints that are designed to be heated with an iron to fix them will work for sun printing. My book, The Found Object in Textile Art, covers that. You used to be able to buy some, I know I'm not going to talk about products here, but you used to buy some from, apart from Cetacolor Soleil, they made some specifically for sun printing, but they were just simply the diluted Cetacolor silk dye. So most silk dyes that you heat with an iron should work. And I'm using that as a get out clause, should work. Because there are a number of things that might interfere with that process. You know, how hot the sun is, which isn't a problem with you guys most of the time, but I can only do sun printing here on sunny days with lots of heat. You know, it's the heat that fixes them. It's also to do with other things that come into the equation: how much dye you use, what type of cloth you're using, how wet it is, how dense the stencils are, or the leaves or the plants. So we come into that old word practice, whatever technique you're using, practice. But certainly you must, you know, I find that it's the silk dyes, the heat fixed silk dyes, transparent, not opaque. Hopefully that answers your question, Carol.
Yes, I think so. And I think it's important to note, or just to remember too, that, I mean, you've done decades of work and testing, and where I think any successful person, they're very much rewarded in public for what they practice in private.
Absolutely.
If that makes
you just
sense.
see a tiny little bit at the top of what we've been doing. And even so, it's that love, it's the beautiful imperfection that I really engage with. So just, I would say, when people talk about you become a master of your techniques, and I would say I would prefer to be a mistress of the unknowing. So I like to think that I'm working in this wonderful area of alchemy, where instead of saying this is designed to do this, I ask what happens if I do that with it instead, as long as I do it within safe boundaries. And please don't go off and start doing rust dyeing inside a closed environment without windows being open. You know, follow and look after your health. But the point is I will push media as much as I can, and that will go for all media, whether it's natural dyes. People, if they've looked through my publications, know I've done rust dyeing and dyeing with natural dyeing with plants, but I don't use them, become specialist in that field, if you like. That's not what I'm interested in. I'm much more interested in the interplay of different materials from the world of painting and the world of textiles. And I've come to the conclusion that I'm a maverick in that process. I will use whatever's to hand, and well, that's given me interesting process. That's given me some interesting ideas to develop, and keep pushing that. And that may not follow, or usually doesn't follow, any design methodology that's recognized as being applied with that particular product. You know, if it tells you to use it in that way, I probably don't ever use it in the way it's designed to be used, or very rarely.
It would be quite impossible to write an instruction manual on how you do things.
Yeah, and students will see me, I think, turn on a penny in a classroom when something exciting happens, and you know, I will engage with that. If I see a participant, and I think to say to the students, we're learning together. So you know, they're artists in their own right, but when we see something really exciting happen, have a discussion about what is it that excites us? Where does that person want to go with it? What does it mean to them? What will they do with it that takes them into their own work, not into, you know, I might do something different with what happens. But that's come as a result of that partnership. So I don't believe anyone has, you know, I've got my work out there in publications. I only have a right over my own work. You know, I can't copyright my techniques, nor should I.
Is there another book in the pipeline?
I can't say. I'm sorry, I just can't say.
Can't say. Well, we hope there is. We hope there is.
Yeah, well, just keep hoping. As I said, I wanted longer between books. There's always another book in the pipeline. Let's just put it that way. There's always a possibility of another book in the pipeline. I tend to prefer to, most people don't know I'm writing a book until it's nearly produced, because I prefer to kind of write in my own space. Because there are things, and there's some people that who will know, because I'll contact them, but it's under trust, because there are things that I would prefer to I need to have time to absorb what I'm doing with writing before I talk about it, because then expectations might come in, and people want to know when, and I'm not in a position where I want to start handling emails or when's it going to happen, etc., etc. But it takes time for it to distill, and it's taking a lot longer this time. I need time out, and I've been gifted this time at the moment. Let's just put it that way. So I've been developing ideas, but I can't say anything at this stage.
Well, I think that's beautiful, and no one's we're our community certainly not putting any expectations on you. So take your time. It's beautiful.
Yeah.
Should we have a little look around your studio now? You were very kind, and I'm just going to bring up a little video here. So Cas has shot a little video, and it shows us inside her studio. So we'll play that, and
that's the one in the garden, I think.
The one in the garden. We'll start there.
Drawing in the garden. And then this is where I work, and the news is on in the background. And there's my shadow.
It's gorgeous. So we go to the one of this.
Yeah, and then people can ask questions if they like. But that used to be Derek's shed, and that's me sitting in my favourite spot in the afternoon doing a drawing and then turning round. The large building is the back of my house.
Just a glimpse of my workspace in the garden. This used to be my partner's shed, and now it's my studio. Mostly work here from about March onwards through to October, November, but I have been here in the middle of December when the weather's been particularly good, where I do most of my wet work. There we go. We'll swing round, and you can see the back is more in shadow. Here we go. And some work in progress.
Beautiful. And I love this photo that you sent through as well. That's a great photo.
Yeah, everything in that space is recycled, including the whole shed. The only new thing is that red chair from IKEA, because I need to have a good chair to sit in at the sewing machine. But my sewing machine is sitting on an old drawing table, and that's on some legs from a previous IKEA table. So everything's recycled.
That's beautiful. And this is your upstairs studio where we're talking to you from now?
Absolutely, and that's where you're the camera, which is, we're talking from my Huawei phone, by the way, everybody. The camera is standing where that sewing machine is. This is I often talk about the sewing machine with my students. This is my Bonina, and I found that in a skip, or as the Americans will say, a dumpster, and managed to get the bobbin winder fixed. And I've been using that for about 25 years. And that leads up to my secret office. It used to be a corner cupboard, and there's a set of stairs. Again, everything's recycled in this space. So the threads that you saw back there were on, that's the children's railway set, a little wooden one where you get the little wooden trains running along, and Derek made that to put my sewing machine threads in.
Oh, wow. That's gorgeous. I loved this view too that you have out your windows, just of your garden, and it's very picturesque. Yeah. Beautiful. Do you have any essential elements of your studio? Like, if somebody was looking to set up a studio at home, would you what advice would you offer them?
Well, in terms of kind of space to have, as well as opposed to this, you need. I would say my essential elements. You need to have a good chair to sit in at sew, an adjustable chair. Treat it in the same way you would if you're at an office. Support yourself and your back. A bench, if you can, at standing height, so you can stand and work, as well as sitting height, so that when you're on your machine, so that your elbows are level. I mean, I think making certain that, particularly as we're all getting older, that you don't put stress and strain on your wrists and your arms and your back. It's incredibly important. I mean, when I was community arts, I was crawling around on the floor with children all the time. And now I can feel the calluses on my knees and the back of my ankles. So, you know, those things do hit you in time. A wet area and a dry area if you can. So big plastic dust sheets are very good. And certainly in this space that I'm in now, and I can kind of talk people through it if they wish and just show you how this one was set up. But this space was my only space at one time. So behind me on the back wall, where you see the sewing machine, and to just lift you up, it's not got any wet work on, but you can see a table. This is handy. Oh, I suppose the essential part in a studio, sorry to make you lock around, but the essential part in a studio is to have a handy fella like Derek. So this was, this is a table that I swapped for a piece of work. I often swap work. And I can take the legs and fold them and put them. So just show you the little secrets. It looks very tidy now. If I do that, that's where my wet work stuff is.
Yeah.
So I have this space that I'm in is about I would say 10 by 11 feet at the most. So that's the Romani coming out. And then if we look here, this is where I do all my photography. And sometimes I audition or look at my work in progress. I've got 3 pieces for my next project in Antwerp over there. And then this piece is one that I've just done since lockdown. I couldn't get any flour or eggs. My neighbour gave me eggs over the garden from her chickens. And it's actually called Where Has All the Flour Gone? Sorry about moving you around. That's the nice thing about the phone. So I'm happy to kind of move around again. But yeah, so good working bench, a standing and a sitting bench. My standing bench is downstairs in the garden space because I can do wet work there. And everything else I've gathered over time. I've got a set of drawers underneath where I'm sitting, which came from my adult education centre when they threw them away. And that's where I store all my paper. So storage. Have places that you can keep things out of sight. Part of the reason is I find people all work differently. So if you can work in clutter, but I find that I get to a point where I have to put everything away so I can see what I'm doing. And even in workshops in classrooms, I often do that. I say this is what I do. I often have a white sheet of paper so I can remove the visual clutter, or black or a grey piece when I'm working. And I don't know whether that's also come from my vision, the fact that I often, when I'm demonstrating, I'll say, if I'm looking for something, can you point me to it? Because occasionally, if there's too much clutter and there's too much texture, smaller things or things of the same tone, I lose quite easily.
Yeah.
But, I don't have double 2 eyes that work.
You don't have 2 eyes that work?
No, my left eye doesn't work.
Oh, really?
No, it's I have an area of grey around the edge, so it's only my right eye that's functioning properly.
Well, there you go. I did have a question, say something that no one would know about you.
I've answered it. See, this is the Romani. I know what sort of question you're going to ask me, Anne.
You know, you're psychic.
I'm more.
You have affectionately been described as the textile gypsy, and I think that's beautiful. Traveling far and wide for your work, to India, to Japan, to Australia. How have the events of lockdown affected your work or influenced your work, and what are you working on now?
I think for I can kind of see me going through 3 stages here, but it's too soon for me to make that observation. I will need to reflect back. I found the first 2 weeks very frightening, actually. I felt like my world had been, and I think that would be for everyone. What I'm doing, what happened to me is happening to everybody. Our whole world had changed. The things that I value that tell me that I am who I am were gone. You know, the workshops I have been committed to had just disappeared out in the ether. And for me, that's who I am. That's what I do, and everything I'm doing has just been taken away from me. And again, it's not me, it's everybody else has had that experience. So the first experience of lockdown was fight or flight. And then I was asked to do a project for textileartist.org. And that was within that first week and a half. And I was the first artist to do it. And I'm not certain I was overly prepared for it at that time. But I believe that people would be a little bit more generous, knowing that that anybody who's contributing around that time are doing so because they wanted to support the communities they care about. But through doing that, I kind of thought, well, only on reflection, I thought I did it, but it's also helped me as well. It helped me to rationalize where I was, and encouraging other people to slow down, to maybe take a look at what's there, calm down, was the advice I was giving myself through doing the workshop. And then in the last few weeks, there have been lots of points of calm, and then that's been mixed with, is this ever going to change? I really don't like the words the new normal. I think we should be looking at the new different. What world are we entering and where we're going? So it's like I'm beginning to gather resources together for myself about how I might manage coming out of this now, and what I want to do at the next stage. Now it's the unknowing, and I'm used to the unknowing, but even this has thrown me. So there are points at which I'm thinking, I still want to teach, I still want to share with the community. And I had made a decision long before this hit us all, that there will be aspects of my teaching that I would stop doing because I'm getting older and I needed to focus on my own work. So, so part of it's about revaluing my work and having time to focus. That's what lockdown has given me. Maybe not in the best circumstances to do it. And a good friend, Dina Beverly, used the terminology, I'm a nomad at home, that I've used the same tools, but I'm using them differently and adjusting myself as I'm working. So that experience of engaging with what's out there has never stopped. It's just I'm looking at it in a different way now. And as we all are, we're being forced to reevaluate where we are. So who knows what the next stage? Bring it on.
Bring it on. Would you like to, I know we've been going for about 50 minutes now, so you just tell us when you've had enough.
I think what they have to say when they've had enough.
Yeah, okay. Or you can talk. Okay, keep talking. Yeah. We've got you mentioned briefly this artwork here. Can you just tell us a little bit about the story about how this came to be and your neighbours and the generosity? And maybe I've just noticed, if it's just me, or there's a lot more red in your work lately, and if that has anything to do with it.
I just think red is a symbol. I don't know if I consciously have used it, but I always recognise through that exchange with other culture that red is symbolic of life as well. It's lifeblood. In India, they use red ties for filial devotion between brothers and sisters. In Japan, it's tied around parcels. It's what runs through us. It's our blood. So it's as simple as that. I'm just going to show you I'll show you a sketch after we've looked at this. But wherever I've been, if I've gone from my cycle, I'm certainly before we knew this was going to happen in January, I made a point that when I was at home, I was going to make certain I cycled the park every day to keep myself fit. And I'd take a sketchbook or a camera and okay, I don't always take photographs, but if there was something I wanted to draw or photograph, I would do that. This is an improvised sketchbook because I'm running out of sketchbooks, and I decided I didn't want to order anymore for a while. So this is made out of scraps of paper, and there's the flower bag. But I carried a tiny landscape sketchbook that I can keep in my pocket, and I carry that same rucksack whether I'm on my bike in the park or when I go shopping, because I have to cycle to get my shopping. There's no online delivery for me because there's no space. So occasionally I'll go through the park and go straight to the shop, maybe every 4 or 5 cycle rides. And I sketch while I'm in the queue waiting to get into the shop. So that's the shop. So this is my outdoor sketchbook. So this is me. That's not me in there. This is a man looking despondently at the water in the park while I'm behind him sketching him quietly on a chair. So I draw voraciously wherever I am, with no intention necessarily of it turning into a piece of work, but it can inform my work. And on that piece that you showed previously, where has all the flour gone, with a bag of flour, thank you. You can see at the bottom it says Green-Laid Bear. That was a headline of the newspaper. And when I went shopping on my way home from my last day of teaching adult education before our lockdown was on the Friday, I went to get some essentials. I wanted to get some bread, some milk, and some eggs. I went into our local store, I won't say the store, and the shelves were stripped. I went in to get something and came out with a bunch of daffodils. There was nothing on the shelves apart from condiments. I've never seen anything like it. And that was incredibly scary because I'd been working that weekend. I had virtually nothing in the cupboard. So although I put Green-Laid Bear, it also says labour and weight. There's a Dutch napkin there. And the eggs came from a friend, and a couple of friends added stuff to their order, and they came around with flour and a small, they'd organised, so I had at least some basics in for a week because we didn't know when stuff would come. And that reminded me that I think that there's been a lot of really strong humanity, people supporting each other during the lockdown, that I've also seen at the early stages. I was frightened by how people were behaving, and I don't know if that was echoed in Australia as well. I found it very frightening.
I think it was. We tried to stay a little bit immune from it by not watching too much of the media and the news and keeping in a little bubble. I know that there was a big rush on toilet paper, and that was sort of the first thing that I heard about this whole situation. I was like, why is there no toilet paper? I don't understand. We don't watch a lot of TV, but I'd like to think that in the most part we've all behaved ourselves relatively well in Australia, but I don't know.
I think that I would say the same applies here. I think most people have behaved relatively well. I think that first panic, people just panicked. And that to physically be in a shop where nothing's on the shelves. We had I think you had it in Australia as well. I remember my grandmother talking about having rations during the war, and everybody had their share. It was so quick, there was no time. I think people were just responding, I've got to look after myself. And I did find it frightening. I mean, it did calm down, but that first week or so, first few days before and after lockdown, they were very scary, and I have to admit that I was scared by it. I mean, I'm living in a town in a highly populated country, and I think by saying that I'm equally scared, it's not. I think we've got to a point of calm now, but I think it's something we need to recognise, that it is a scary place sometimes to be, and we're doing our best to get through it. We're all doing our best, and what's happening here is happening in Australia. It's happening all over the world, and maybe it will tie us together better. We've got to hope for that, haven't we?
Amen. Yes.
I didn't want that to become that. I want it to be about the work, but I think this is impacting the work.
And that's exactly right, because your work, what we value, what we miss, is very prominent now, because we're sitting here and we're going, well, we really do have that time and space to contemplate that. How is that current project going, and how can people get involved with it?
I'll tell you a little bit about its history. This was for the Gypsy Maker 4 project, and over the last 2 years, I've been working on some pieces amongst other projects and teaching that I have been doing as part of a commission from Arts Council Wales and the Romani Cultural and Arts Company. They'd invited me to take part in an exhibition that was happening this spring. We had the first venue, but the other two obviously had been closed. Gypsy Maker 4, which is about revaluing the place that travelling people, the Romanis, the Gypsies, the Anukshan, the walking people, have in our cultural identity, the nomadic culture, which is recognised throughout the world, you know, that we've always had travelling people. And so that there is a biannual exhibition where they invite 2 artists. I was invited with Dan Turner, who is a sculptor, to create some works they'd seen my work for this exhibition. It was open, what we wanted to do. And my part was places, spaces and traces, and it's about where we connect to place. That's very important to me, how we are within a place, what relationships we have. During the exhibition, I was doing a workshop with a group of homeless people, and I started to think about the people who are coming into Kent at the moment as well, the migrants. And this is long before we knew this was going to happen. So it's a question I asked then. If you had to leave somewhere and you could only take something with you, what physically would you put in your rucksack? And what is it about what you're leaving behind you would miss the most? So that's where it all started. But I find it very surreal, because we're in that same place now. We are confined. We're limited by where we can go and what we can do because of this coronavirus crisis. And I think we're all finding different things we need to value about ourselves, about our families, about where we are, and the things that we're missing because we took them for granted. You know, one of the things I'm certainly going to miss as we're coming out, and I'm already starting to miss, is the freedom to cycle calmly on the roads, because now our roads are building up again. And I think I hadn't realised how lucky that 12 weeks were, where I felt free on my bicycle. So it's about not taking things for granted ever again.
That's beautiful. And can people send you in cloth or send you in remnants of fabric for you to work on? Did I read somewhere about that? Or
yeah, there is a link at the moment, and it will remain in place. And giving a broad description, it's never going to be prescriptive. So I will show you a couple of things that people have been doing. But they can write words on a tiny scrap. I'm going to pull one across. I'm going to just show you the back of this, because some of you may have seen me over the last 2 years doing stitching while traveling. So what I've got on here, and I don't want to reveal what words these are until the exhibition. So these are going to be kept quiet, and they look like a Semitic writing. You know, you don't know what it is. So this is the back, which will be seen as well. And it's to do with the things I was hearing while I traveled, or I read in headlines in the papers, all to do with movement of people. And some people I've been discussing this with have sent me in some scraps. This is quite a big one, but there can be small ones, and they will be incorporated into big panels, which if I turn it round, you can see in the corner of my room, there are 3 in process there. Okay. I'm still at that development stage, because I'm meant to be going over to Antwerp, where this will be exhibited again this autumn. I was there last autumn, and that's when I lost my whole portfolio. Some people might remember that. So I'm missing that, of course. But I'm not certain if I will get over there before the end of the year now. But I will be exhibiting, and I'll reveal more information about that as we progress. next summer, all going well. We don't know where we are. But another aspect of this installation that's come about, and I'll show you a couple that people have sent to me, is, and it's early stages, is that I have another long piece of cloth where I'd like to add some of the odd words that people can send in about what they value and what they miss. So you might want to just stitch a word, and that will be added to a longer panel, which will hang in a stairwell. But some people have sent me some handkerchiefs as well, or napkins. And so there is a couple here. This was one that was done by one of the homeless groups. So here we are. Yeah. Mm. She said she would miss painting my memories for the future. So she was painting pictures of her mother, so she had them to last with her because her mother was no longer with her. And so holding that memory was important to her. She would miss, if her memories went, she don't know what she would miss. Think of, I worked with an Alzheimer's charity, so you know that person, but their memories have gone and they'll remember the past, but maybe not what was more immediate. So it could be intangible things. And this one was said, I think it says in Dutch, about my sister being a big girl now. So this is another handkerchief, missing the childhood. This is by a friend who lives down the road, a family, lovely Linda, a family, friends, a kiss and a smile. So it can be tangible. It can be also represented by an object. So teacup would be, you know, I'm going to be using teacups in this installation, but for me, teacups are a symbol of friendship. Or coffee cup, you meet together over tea. Like bread and eggs, the staples of life. So they can be symbolic as well as words. And this last one is just my father. And I did this because I wanted to show when I was working in Gypsy Maker, and you've seen some images, you see some behind you of my grandmother, but in my new work I've been using some images of my family. And this is my father, and I miss my father, I have to say that, but in 1943 he took his exams for Norwich City Art College. So if you ever wondered why I did what I do, the reason's here as well, in this man who's sitting at a fairground, Travellers Fairground, in front of the prances, the horses, with his just coming back from national service in 1953. He couldn't do what I did at art college. He had to do something practical, but we're all who we are because we had someone before us.
He looked so proud and dapper.
They all looked dapper then. Those photographs were quite amazing, weren't they?
Yeah, that's beautiful, Cas. If there's anyone out there who's an artist at the moment and they're feeling a little stuck, or they're feeling a little bit, I don't want to say unmotivated, but if they're just not getting into the studio, or they just don't know where to start, or what advice would you give them during this time that maybe has helped you through it?
Breathe. Go for a walk. Don't feel that you have to do anything at all. Carry a sketchbook, because you never know when you might seize upon an idea. And even if you write things down and note them, but cut yourself some slack. You know, be kind to yourself. But the other thing that's useful is do some things that you can handle easily to begin with. Little things, little projects, even if it's, I've always wanted to find out how, you know, this is a rhetorical question, but I've been keeping some onion skins and tea bags, and I want to reinvestigate staining of stuff. So, you know, you don't have to do a big project. It takes me quite a while for things to distill normally. But just keep, you know, it's easy to say keep doing. Pick up that needle and I think the ideas will follow. Pick up that pen and the ideas will follow. Don't think you need to work towards anything. And if it's something that you can do because you enjoy doing it, like knitting, because you feel comfortable doing that and it relaxes you, let that happen, because something might come from just doing that. I don't know if I'm the best person to advise actually on this, because we're all different. We all have our different ways of engaging. Laugh, try to find your friends out there online. Be honest with how you're feeling. And I suppose for me it's natural. Whenever I'm disturbed about something, I'll always pick up a needle, and that calms me immediately. So that's a different way of thinking, I suppose. It's been my safe place. It's actually, it probably is. It's the thing that's remained part of what I've been doing throughout my life. So that's the thing that I have some control over, is what I do creatively. That's the thing I own. Nobody can tell me to put my needle down. Nobody can tell me that I can't pick up my pencil. They might be able to advise me, which they say they're advising, but you can get heavy fines. They might be able to tell me, inform me that I have to stay 2 meters away from someone. And that, believe me, could be a blessing in the future if we install that rule for me wherever I travel in the future. But you know that. But and I tell you, when I'm talking with you now, and I'm teaching my students on a Friday, because I'm on this phone and I want to move it around, I just say mute to them, and they just mute. And I just said, I'm going to introduce that when I'm back in the classroom, then you might listen more.
Very good idea. I think there's some school teachers that might like to put that into place as well. I'd like to just go to a couple of questions and then just tell a little story about how we met, and then we'll wrap it up. Susan, lovely Susan, who just joined us about 7:30, she sent in a pre-question online, and she says, yeah, what difference do you notice between the colours and the light of Australia and England? How do you respond, and how is your work influenced by these differences?
I should have had this book open on the page, because I did a blog maybe about 3 or 4 years ago, and it's remained with me, my thoughts about that blog. And that applies to any place that I'm in. I did a project called The Edges of Australia, which was an unfolding scroll, and I started that when I was with Peter Lloyd in Queensland, and it followed me around the last time I was in Australia in 2015 and 2018. Oh, I can never remember how many times I've been now. No, it was 2015. Sorry, that was before the 2018 one. And I think that was my 4th visit, and I was only then beginning to make sense of how I felt in Australia about that environment. Hi, Susan. Okay. So what the difference is? There are some fabulous Jan, but the Double Trouble have made some fabulous studies of Australia, and I can make quick sketches and drawings while I'm in the outback, the bush, or in the towns, but I don't live there. I don't belong to that landscape, and the light is very harsh. It's very soft here. I mean, it's a bright sunny day here, but most of the time we're living in a softer, clouded environment, and so that the light is harsher. The landscape to my eyes is quite alien. It doesn't mean I don't love it. I think it's fabulous landscape, but I don't live in it. I don't experience it enough to feel I can do it justice, and nor should I. I'm not of that landscape. I don't live there, so I find that connection hard. But there were things that I responded to that had a familiarity, and these were the everyday things, and you could call it the things that remind me of home, which you do sometimes, but have a slightly different twist. Tea, having a cup of tea, and anywhere I've gone, that's been so important. And sometimes teapots are hanging on a veranda, as they were in my friend's house in Perth, Pam. Sometimes they are an object of drawing or study, as they were when I was in a workshop, but that's something we hold together. Absolutely, Susan. That's what you said. Susan just said her colours are bright and solid often, and ours are soft. And I think we're informed by our landscape. And I believe that's why, for me, it's about what's coming through here. That long time association, I think, is part of how my work has presented itself. So even though I have bright red on that piece over there that you've seen to do with the flower, where have all the flowers gone, there's still a softness about how the lines are drawn and how it's worked. So things are seen, and where I grew up in Norfolk, it's a very soft, flat landscape, and the mist comes in from the sea. There's lots of water, so I grew up with that inbuilt into me. But Australia has made an impact. I have made some work, but it's always been about the edges of Australia, the things that are on the edges of connection, I would say, between myself and you in Australia. And that holds us together, that binds us together as a people. Does that help?
That was beautiful. That was beautiful. I always find that the most interesting bits are on the edges.
Yeah.
Yeah. So you've been to Australia six times, 5 times, 6 times you've been to?
I believe it might have been 6 this time. I'd need to check, but I think it would have been 6 this time.
Yeah. And I remember the very first time I met you, and it was through Fibre Arts Australia, and we were in Ballarat, and we were doing the walk. Glenys and Noni were doing the walk with the tutors and showing you all your beautiful classrooms at Ballarat Grammar, and you were off scuttling around and going through you were asking me all these questions saying, where's the photocopy machines? And I'm like, oh, they're just over there. And you were like, fantastic. And off you went, and you were searching through the bins. And you'd come back and you had this big great wad of paper and scraps, and you were so excited by what you'd found. And I'm like, who is this crazy lady? But this is great. No worries. We're going to keep going. And anyway, as the workshop progressed, because they're 5 days of intensive workshops where the students just get to work with you or with the tutor of their choice. And like being one of the helpers there, I get to come in and out of the classrooms. And then I got it. I went into your classroom and I was like, oh, now I understand what she was doing. And I'll never look at scrap paper or remnants in the same way ever again. To the point where even when we were serving dessert, and the dessert has this waxed paper under it. I don't know if you remember this, but it has this waxed paper under it. And I'm like, oh, look at that. And I'm wiping it down and bringing it over to you saying, Cas, you need to use this.
It's catching, isn't it? I think
it really is.
I think I'm very conscious of how much waste we produce, and I'm not, I only through my own practice do I reuse it, and for a variety of reasons. It might be that the cloth has a history that's really, for me, interesting and fabulous, and it's part of the story of that piece of cloth. But even the overlooked things that pass through our hands daily can be of use. And it can be everyday waste. We're in a post-industrial, post-technology world, and we produce so much stuff. And I think that first came from community arts, where I had to be inventive with what I was able to do, because we had limited funds for materials and stuff. And whatever funds I had, I wanted to go on good brushes and good paints. So I would find different ways of working with what we had to stretch that money a bit further. So. And perhaps when you said about when did I want to be an artist, that goes back to being given a set of stuff to use, because I was using the backs of my dad's wallpaper books, because he was a painter and decorator, and using up his old paints as a child. So that's always been with me. You use what you had around you because you didn't have very much. So it's never really changed. Yeah, I do get a bit passionate about that, as equally about they could turn into something else and they're a vehicle. That's really almost to insanity, and I think I drive everybody who takes part in my workshop slightly insane with that.
No,
and I'm not great. I'll as long as it's been used before, that's my rule. I want to reuse, so it doesn't matter if it's I've been using synthetics. One of the pieces you had shown earlier on was trees, which is an installation, and that's the view through my blinds. I have blinds that you pull across, the vertical blinds, and through those blinds I can see the trees of the park. Now the blinds, old blinds, and a lot of the stuff we put in our windows are synthetics. Now those synthetics will go to landfill, so I don't usually use, at that point I hadn't used a lot of synthetics, but I thought this is right for this project, so what can I do with that material? So use it. Although I'm not a great believer in that we should be producing plastic, if we've already got it, use it. Don't just, at least if it's getting a second use or being used in my work, it's getting used again. So, and everything I wear is secondhand anyway. So, secondhand roses me.
Wow, you do it well. You do it very well. When can we see you again in Australia?
We're working on that. I will have conversations with Dennis. I'm in the same position that I would think most people are with their lives at the moment. I have projects already scheduled for 2021, and I'm fitting some shorter weekend workshops around them. But I also need to mind my own health, make certain I don't overcommit. So there is flexibility. I will be back. It may not be till 2022, but what party we'll have, because I'm going to miss out on that party in September. And maybe I have to get you to set me up on a Zoom meeting and I can join in virtually for an hour. Give you all a challenge. I'd do that free of charge. I'd give you artists meeting up in September a challenge. If Glenys is listening, if not, pass it on to her.
Absolutely.
Yeah,
we could organise something.
Yeah, because it's a mad world to be at Ballarat doing that workshop, but it's a very good mad world to be in.
Lorna agrees.
Hi, Lorna. Nice to see you.
It's going to be fun. It's going to be something that, Glenys and Noni put on a great show anyway and a great event, but I think this one in September is going to be a real release for people, a lot of people, and really great therapy after some difficult times. So it's great therapy anyway. But
yeah, and people need it, and good for Fibre Arts Australia for doing the right thing soon enough, for being there to advise our artists, because I don't know. No, I won't use that expression I used earlier, but you know what I said. Most of us didn't know which way we were going to go. It was very disruptive. We had to work very, very quickly, and they've been supporting their community throughout that time. And what is sad is I have seen that recently there are some projects that are not going to survive. The creative industry is going through a big hit at the moment. So sorry about that. That was our door.
That was perfect timing. Oh, Cas.
Oh, we're at home, aren't we? What else can you expect? I think my partner's painting the windowsill at the moment.
That's great. Well, finally, I just want to say thank you so much for, we've been on talking for over an hour and it's just been so insightful and beautiful. And thank you so much for being so generous with your time, your knowledge, and your spirit as well. You've just got this great energy about you and it's just a pleasure to talk to you. And I guess if there was one quote that you'd love to be remembered for, do you know what that would be, or would you like to share that with us?
To do different. That will always be the quote that I will carry forward. To do different. And that comes from my native Norfolk. And the University of East Anglia has adopted that, and they say to do differently. So not to try to be the same as anyone else. Try to do what's right and to do different. It's always like, take a step back, see what's going on, and make up your own mind.
That's really gorgeous, Cas. Thank
so
you so much. Do I have a quote?
Yeah.
I've always said...
Yeah, carry on.
My family say that Ange never lets the details get in the way of a good story, or the truth get in the way of a good story.
No, I think a good story is worth it. I would like to finish.
I love a good story.
Yeah,
I love a good
I'd like
story.
to finish off and ask anyone who's listened into this, please send in your quotes, either one that you live by, or even one that you think would describe your experience of taking part in a Fibre Arts Australia workshop, what it is and what it means to you.
That would be awesome. Yeah, describe that experience would be awesome. Even if it was just a one-liner or one word would be, yeah, what a great way. Well, let's do that. We'll pop them on the Facebook comments below, and that would be what a great way to keep people engaged. Thanks so much, Cas.
Thank you, and thank you for being part of that story of keeping a creative hopes going for the future. We need to keep that going. Bye-bye.
Yes. Thank you, Cas.
Bye.
I'll put some thank yous up for everyone.
You're welcome.
Oh, Anne
Bye-bye,
was with us.
Anna.
Hi, Anne.
I'll say good for you. Bye-bye. Bye, Jeannie. Bye, Madeline. Nice to see you here. Bye, Sharon. Bye, Lorna.
Inspiring. What a great word, Madeline.
Thank you.
Okay, Cas. See you later.
See you later.